Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap. Welcome to the beautiful Yellowstone card kit workshop. We're gonna make 12 gorgeous cards together, so let's go ahead and get started. I've got my kit here. I'm going to set aside the envelopes and all the ribbon and charms and tags that came with the kit. I have my papers left here, my instructions, my Fiskars guillotine trimmer. If you don't have one of these yet, make sure you snag one. I've got my score pal over here on my left, set aside for later. And I'm also going to be staying organized with our accordion pocket file. Now, if you don't have this, don't worry about it. I just want you to maintain 4 piles to stay organized, A, B, C, and D. And then later on, we can worry about setting you up with our kit to make one of your own. But this is really a nice way to stay organized within a small space. And we will be trimming everything required for all 12 cards at the beginning of the workshop. Now I have my paper stack here, and I'd like to first, before we trim anything, is get the papers sorted into the order we'll be trimming them. So let's find one sheet of the brick colored paper, and then dig for one ivory, then one green, and one teal. Now you'll find that the teal has a texture, and like this side has this linen-y feel, and the other side is kind of smooth. I'll put a texture side down. Later on, I'll be flipping this pile back over again. Next, let's repeat all of those colors in that same order. So we'll go brick, and ivory, and green, and once again, the teal, texture side down. Then you find 2 sheets of brown. You can go ahead and find both of those. You've got 2 beautiful prints. Those will be next. You should be left with Cutaparts. Now, these have a lot of different squares on the end, so place the one with the squares face down, and then the other one that's has a little bit less art on it. That'll be face down. Next, pick up the whole stack, turn it over so that the brick is on top, and let's begin with our trimming. Now, I'm gonna first check the grain direction of this brick colored paper because I want to make sure that it cooperates later on. We're gonna turn this into a card. So hold by the center of the edge, give it a wiggle, study the behavior of the paper, and compare to a neighboring edge. Do you see how different the paper acts? Here it's very stiff. Here, it literally just droops down. So make sure that the droop of the paper goes from the top of the trimmer to the bottom in this direction, top to bottom. That corresponds with the arrow that I've added to the diagram for this paper, so that you know it goes top to bottom. Now we're gonna trim 2 sheets at the same time. So in come the ivory, check it again for, this is stiff, this is nice and droopy. So both sheets go in together. And if you're not comfortable with doing them at the same time, don't worry about that. Just rewind and then do it individual sheets. And this diagram gets used 4 times for 4 sheets of paper. So we're gonna do it twice together, 2 sheets each, okay? So unlock your blade, find your 11-inch mark here. Make sure it's inches. This is 11 centimeters, this is 11 inches. Make sure the paper is neatly stacked. Push down on that clear bar to prevent the paper from wiggling. And now you're committed. You trimmed at 11. Slide down to 8.5. And that's 8 plus 2 columns to the left. So 8, 8.25, 8.5. Then rotate the piece in your trimmer. Let the other pieces lay where they landed. And we'll cut at 10.25, so that's 10 plus 1 column left, and 7. And if I'm going too fast, you can always just adjust your YouTube playback speed to 0.75, and that'll really slow me down. Okay, these 2 pieces here are gonna grow up to become cards. For now, we're gonna set them aside because they need to be scored, so don't put them in the accordion pocket file. Then we have this longer, wider strip here. We're gonna trim this at 8.25. And that gets placed in pocket C, Charlie. And there are 2 tiny little pieces that fell from the end. Those I can just dispose of. This next narrower 8.5-inch strip, that goes in pocket C, Charlie, as well. And then we have this long strip. There's 2 of them always, right? And we're gonna trim this one horizontally at 10.75, so 10, and 3 columns to the left. 1, 2, 3. And 7.25. The piece you just created that's in your trimmer, pocket C for Charlie, and the smaller one, B, Bravo, and this little piece too, also in pocket B, Bravo. This long strip, you can place it in B as well. B, bravo. Okay, we get to do all that one more time. So I'm gonna check the grain direction of this green, yellowish green paper. It's a hard color to define. And the beautiful teal paper, one of my favorite colors. Teal, favorite color, color of the Club Scrap logo. I'm gonna trim this now, both at the same time at 11. And then down again to 8.5. Rotate that 8.5 inch piece, trim at 10.25 and 7. Now here you just made 2 more card bases. We'll set those aside. This larger rectangle here will trim just a shaving, so 8.25. This goes in pocket C, Charlie. Get rid of your tiny little scraps. And this guy goes also in C, doesn't need to get trimmed further. This long strip, however, we will cut again at 10.75. So 10, 1, 2, 3 left. And then 7.25. This longer piece, pocket C, Charlie. The smaller rectangle and the really small rectangle, B, bravo. And this long 12-inch piece, B, bravo. Okay, that was it for the first diagram in our instructions. I'm gonna take the next sheet of this brick and we'll place it so this time it dips from left to right because that's what the arrow on the diagram says. So make sure your really nice droopy side is drooping from left to right, east to west, however you wanna look at it. And then I will take this one, again, left to right. Okay, stack them neatly together if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, you know, go back and do it one at a time. We're just gonna trim this at 9. This is pretty easy. Now rotate the 9-inch piece so it's horizontal. Trim at 11.75 and 6.25. This chunk and this chunk, they're different sizes, right? But all of them become cards. So set them aside to be scored. You got this long skinny piece. You can put it in pocket D and use it later if you want. I think I did use it on a few of my cards, but it's absolutely optional. This last strip here, we're gonna trim at 8. Nice whole number finally. This goes in pocket C, Charlie, and this one goes in B, bravo. We're gonna repeat that all one more time with 2 more sheets of paper. All right, we're dipping easily left to right with the green. We're dipping easily left to right with the turquoise. Or teal, whatever we're calling it. And once again, we will trim this at 9. And then rotate and cut at 11.75 and 6.25. 2 sets of cards to be made. Set those aside. You've got that skinny little strip. We can use it as an option if we want, but I'll set them aside for now. And this last strip we'll cut at 8. Large piece, pocket C, Charlie. Boy, everything's going into C. And B, where's port A? Have we put anything in A? Not quite yet, but we will, I promise. Okay, this is kind of an interesting little process here. I'm really glad you've joined me for the video because it's important. I'm gonna help you through it. Here we have this 1 sheet of brown. The other one should be over here. We're only trimming 1 sheet, and I want the grain direction to be going from left to right, dipping easily this way. We're gonna trim at 11.25 and 9. Now here I have a time saver for you, okay? I want you to do this with me now. It's a little weird, it's a little out of the norm, but grab your score pal or grab your scoring tool. I hope you have one. It's really handy. And if you don't, you can use like a 3-inch ruler or something to help you with this, but you're gonna need to, we're not folding things in half here. We're kicking it up a notch, okay? So take this piece that you just created, this 9x12. Place it into your score pal vertically. So it says the number 9 on the top and the 12 is down here. And then I'm gonna score this at 3 inches. Okay. Then I'm gonna flip this paper from the bottom edge, I'm gonna bring it up to the top and score at 6 inches. That's it. Set your score pal aside. Your scoring tool, you can set that aside. And now I'm gonna place this 9x12 back into my trimmer horizontally. So when we make our cuts, we're going to be cutting through the score lines. All right. So we'll trim this at 9, 6, and 3. That gives us 4 strips. They're already all scored, and those are going to go in pocket A. Next up, we have this strip here. This is 2 1/4 by 12. We're going to cut it horizontally at 11 1/4, 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. You just made a whole bunch of squares and a tiny little scrap. So the squares go in pocket C, Charlie, and you have this long strip too. You can incorporate it if you want, or just set it aside or put it in pocket D. Usually I put things in pocket D that I might decide to use later. And we're moving on to page 2 of our instructions. Now this time the grain direction of the paper doesn't matter because we won't be folding anything, and therefore the grain doesn't matter. So we'll cut at 9 3/4. So it's 9, 1, 2, 3. 7 1/2, 7 plus 1, 2, and 4 1/4. We're exercising all of our measuring skills here for our quarters, halves, and 3/4. Now rotate the piece that's in your trimmer. We'll cut at 9 3/4, 6 1/2, 3 1/4. And that gives us a series of 3 rectangles that are the same. 1, 2, 3. Those go in pocket B, bravo. And you'll be left with this little rectangle. You can set that aside or put it in pocket D. Now we have this next rectangle. This measures 3 1/4 by 12. I want you to trim it at 7 3/4. And this may shock you, but this larger piece is a scrap. I did find a home for it, so just bear with me. For now, I'm going to set it aside. And this other rectangle goes in pocket B, bravo. Now we have a 2 1/4 inch strip here. We're going to trim this just like we did on the last sheet of brown. We had a bunch of cuts. Our first one's at 11 1/4, 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. Here again, you made a bunch of squares for pocket C, Charlie, and a little scrap. We're gonna make 2 more squares, okay? So we'll go at 9 3/4 and 7 1/2. So you have this long strip. That goes in the scrap pile, and the 2 squares, pocket C again. Man, that's a lot in pocket C. Okay, here we are with this stunning print. Let's trim this, and I'm just gonna do it with this pattern going horizontal. It really doesn't matter, okay? You're just gonna have this variation, and it's just a gorgeous print really in any direction. Okay, so let's cut at 8, and this is just one print, not 2 of them, only one. And 5 1/4. Rotate that 5 1/4. We'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. And you made 4 pieces that are the same. All of those go in pocket A. And you do have a small scrap that fell from the end. We're gonna cut the next strip, which is 2 3/4 by 12. We're gonna cut at those same numbers. So that's 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. And you've got your 4 squares also going in pocket A with another little scrap that fell from the end. This final strip, it's 4 by 12. We'll trim at 11 1/2 and 5 3/4. These 2 pieces, pocket B, bravo, and a little scrap that fell from the end. Moving along to the other print. Bear with me here on this one. Always just wait for me to give you the direction, okay? Before you move anything. It'll help us get some good results. So we're gonna cut this at 11 3/4. So that's gonna create a really narrow strip. Then 6 3/4 and 4. rotate that 4x12. We'll trim at 11.5 and 5 3/4. This gives us 2 more panels for pocket B and a small scrap that fell from the end. Let's make some squares out of this, but first a scrap. So we'll trim this at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. So here are those 4 squares for pocket A and a small scrap that fell from the end. This is going to be fun, so just bear with me here. It's not too bad, but I just want to, hold your attention here. We're going to trim at 8. Nice, easy number. Now, take the piece that's in the trimmer right now, this 8-inch piece, and rotate it so it's vertical. And we're going to cut some strips. The first number here is 3 3/4, 2 1/2, and then 1 1/4. Now this is really a narrow piece, but with this trimmer it works fine. So you find your 1, you go left 1 column, and just use your finger on that clear bar to stabilize the paper, keep it from moving, and that gives you 2 really nice strips, well 4 to be exact, 4 the same size, and they're going to go in pocket C, Charlie. Believe it or not, this is a scrap, so you can use it at your discretion. I'm going to set that aside. And now it's time to trim our Cutaparts. These require a little bit of prep, not much, but the perimeter of the Cutapart needs to be removed according to that printed guideline in the corner of the sheet. So usually when I cut my first edge off, I get close to the mark, but not right up to it. I want to clean that up later on my last rotation. Then when I rotate this, I have a better view of where the edge of that stainless steel bar is, because I can see it at the top, at that hash mark, and at the bottom, and I can fine tune that really nicely. The goal is basically to make that little mark go away. Then I will rotate and again line up the marks, watching carefully at the top and bottom of the blade. Rotate, and now this time I should be able to look at the 12-inch mark on the left of my trimmer base, and it should line up on the right, and it looks pretty good. And once again, for that final, this is my 5th edge cut, and you can see it's just a really thin piece, and my trimmer is happy to do it for me. It does a great job, and I can get rid of those little scraps and now trim this officially into its little subsets. So make sure that the squares where it says Happy Trails here, make sure that's all on the right before we start. And we're going to begin at 10 inches, and then 8, 6, and 3 1/4. Rotate that 3 1/4 inch piece so the words Seek Adventure are on your right, and cut at 10 3/4, 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. Okay, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 panels the same size for pocket B. Now we get to do some really intricate trimming. You're going to place this one where it says Go Play Outside and then Explore 4 times. Let's put it on the right with the Explore. We'll cut at 2 3/4. Otherwise, visually just guide it to separate. 2 1/4, 1 3/4, and 1 1/4. That's basically every 1/2 inch. Boop. All right, Go Play Outside. I ended up using that on the inside of a card in set B. And then all the little guys that fell, also B. And then you have this Seek Adventure, B as well. The next strip we're gonna trim with the word Explore on the far right before we get started. Cut at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. And there should be 4 squares the same size. I think they're square. Yes, 4 squares the same size for pocket A, Alpha, and the Explorer I used in C, Charlie. This next long strip, we get to trim it in half. How handy is that? Just cut at 6. And both pieces, probably for obvious recognizing, they're going that pocket C with everything else. And now we have these 2 strips. Now, if you want, you can face them together. I usually like to go back to back. So the white side to the white side, stack them really neatly. And we'll cut at all the even numbers. So that's 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Now, you're probably going to want to just flip them back so you don't get confused. All right, and then all of these, pocket C. Oh my goodness, that pocket is loaded. One more sheet of cut-aparts to go. So once again, I will just cut shy of the mark on my first edge. And then when I rotate, I once again can identify the edge of that guide with the edge of my blade, both at top and bottom. I can't, the paper's too large for me to see the bottom when I cut the first time. So that's why I just come back later, do it again. Now here I can look at my 12. And here I can look at my 12 to shave that last little bit off the edge. And we're looking good. Okay, to start we need all these individual art elements on the right. And by the way, that always matches what it says in the instructions. I'll have the diagram right there for you. And we'll trim at 9 3/4 and 5 1/4. Rotate. So the trees are on the right. We'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. So you have 4 of these, they're all the same, going in pocket A. And this little guy I used in C again. Okay. So here we have do not pet the fluffy cows. That's a thing. Did you know that? If you go to Yellowstone, they have those signs all over, don't pet the fluffy cows. Okay, we're gonna go 9 1/4 here with that cow on the right. Make sure your kindness brighten my day. That's gonna be on your left. Then let's see, 6 1/2 and 3 3/4, and then hold the 3 3/4 inch piece, rotate so your kindness brighten my day goes to the left, and you'll trim at 2 1/4. Take your kindness goes in B, Bravo, and then congratulations goes in C, Charlie. You have 3 more pieces that are the same size for pocket B, Bravo. And we're almost done. It's our last one. So we're gonna have, I heard there was cake, that should be on the left, and then thanks for being an amazing friend, that should be on the right. We'll start at 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, and your last cut, 2 1/4. Congratulations. The 4 squares that are the same, pocket A, and then the last piece, C, Charlie. And now it's time to do some scoring. So I'm gonna swap that out with my trimmer. Okay, so here we have a teal colored paper, and it's 9 inches by 6 1/4. So check your measurement, make sure you have the right piece. Place it in horizontally and we'll score at 4 1/2. And then there's gonna be another one, larger like that, 9 by 6 1/4. We'll score at 4 1/2. Then I'm gonna skip the next 2. These are smaller, so I'm gonna wait on those and find my other larger ones. So again, 9 by 6 1/4, score at 4 1/2. Confirm your size, score at 4 1/2. And all 4 of these card bases go in pocket B, Bravo. Now, remaining from that batch, I've got the set of 4 smaller ones. So this is going to be different. These are also 9 inches wide, but they're shorter at 5 1/2. Score at 3, and then flip the paper from the bottom to the top and score again at 6. So it's 3, flip, 6. 3, flip bottom to top, 6. 3, flip, 6. And 3, flip, 6. All of these go in pocket A. You're gonna love how those come together. It's just amazing. Here we have our slimline card bases. Now this is 7 on the vertical, and then this is 8.5. So you got to make sure that the 7 is up here, and we score. And this is a texture side facing up. We'll score at 3.5. Again, make sure your reading is at 7. Score at 3.5, 3.5, and 3.5. Look at all those card bases you just made. It's amazing. Those go in pocket C. And now I'm ready to get rid of my score pal, and we can make a dozen cards like that. Let's get started. I've flipped to page 3 of my instructions, and let's empty pocket A. A lot of stuff in there, it's real fun. And right away we can look at our card bases and note right away that there's a anatomy of a score line is that there's a bump on one side of that score and there's a divot on the other, right? The bump of the score line is what goes on the inside of the fold. So as I fold these, I'm gonna just bury that bump. So here's the raised bump, and that's what goes on the inside. Then I'll flip it, there's the other bump. And so by having you do that flip when we were scoring, it automatically guides you to make the folds exactly as I wish, which is like this Z fold or an accordion style fold. So once again, I'm always looking for the bump. And if you want to burnish, you can burnish in batches. You can burnish one fold at a time. I like to burnish in batches because obviously I'm freaky about being efficient. But if you just like to just make that crease as you go, you can do that too. And always just eyeball too to make sure everything's lining up nicely before you make that final crease. Again, always looking for the bump. On this blue textured paper, we'll consider how we work with that when we are assembling our cards. And now this brown too has the same type of a setup. Here's a bump. I'm going to fold on that. And the other bump is on the other side. So I'm going to fold up on that. Once again, making sure that everything lines up nicely into a square shape. It's going to be so fun and so easy. You're just going to be blown away. It's awesome how this comes together. And I love that time-saving thing that we did. Remember, we first trimmed the paper to the right size, and then we scored it, and then we trimmed it further. And that way, instead of scoring 8 times, we only had to score 2 times. Isn't that cool? Okay, now, those are the things that were scored. We also have this pile, and what I like to do is just organize my pieces by size so that it's easy to kind of identify things and distribute them to our card bases. So let's take this teal card base and then the green. I'm setting this up kind of like it's showing in the instructions. Then the ivory and the brick. Each one gets a brown square that's been accordion folded. Then each one gets the larger beautiful print. Each one gets a larger, strange looking design, but it has a really cool purpose. Each card will get 2 of these beautiful squares. I am so in love with this print. Then we'll do the smaller ones. We got I Heard There Was Cake. That'll be on the bottom 2 cards, and The World Is Yours to Explore will be the top 2. Happy Celebrating will be with the I Heard There Was Cake, and then Here's to Another Year of Adventures on the top 2. Okay, that is the general layout, and now it works out great if you find the set of 4 envelopes that are the smallest size. Those are for these cards, and I'm going to load my envelope with the materials used on card 2, 3, and 4. And we will concentrate on assembling this first card, okay? So here we go. Now, you notice right away this is a circle, and you have a couple of options. I'll show you this one. You can simply take scissors and follow the perimeter of that circle. And what I like to do is open the scissor blades as wide as they'll go so that I have fewer jagged lines on my circle. And that'll pretty much take care of it. Easy peasy. Nice. Then you got this guy. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing here. Make quick work of just trimming the sign. I love this. I love this art and the font. It's so National Parks, isn't it? And then around that corner and get rid of this piece here. Okay, so that's some prep work. Now another option is that you can, I think you have to use the larger, remember the brown I told you we had a purpose for? If you have a little circle die, a little thin cutting die, that's a little larger than this, it would be about 2¼ inches. And if you even have a circle die that's 2 inches, you can cut this with your 2-inch die, you can cut this with your 2¼ inch die, and you'll have a cute little mat for your sentiment. And I'm not gonna do that because I'm not gonna assume that you have that and spend time working on something you don't even own. So don't worry about it. We're gonna do it without. But I'm just saying that's what I did on my sample. So here that is. You've got that cute little, I had a stitched edge here and a smooth edge for this one. Turned out really sweet, okay? But it's, you know, you don't have to do that. To get started here, I'm going to take my card and make sure that when you start working, here's your texture side is facing up, and we've got a mountain fold on my left and a valley fold on my right. Okay, now if it's like this, just make sure it's the textured side is facing the front. Then open up your other accordion folded piece and make sure it's positioned the same way. Mountain fold, valley fold, okay? Easy enough. Now, take this printed, larger printed panel and your favorite adhesive. I'm just starting a new roll of my ATG, which is my favorite adhesive to use for card making. And I'm going to place this right on the first panel of the card base. Then we've got this guy, and this is important, so pay attention, okay? We're gonna add adhesive and attach this to the third panel of the larger card, making sure that the blue half rectangle or half square, whatever, is on the right edge. That's a placement guide for us. It's real strategic, okay? Now, again, making sure that our mountain is here, our valley is here. I'm gonna put adhesive on these two printed squares. And I'm gonna match the direction of the print here. So with vertical lines, I'll add to the first and second panel of this brown card, or brown scored piece. And then I'm gonna add this inner sentiment to the third panel. Here's to another year of adventures. Could I have left the perimeter on there? Yes, absolutely. You could do that too. Okay, now what I did here is took some of this ribbon, this rust colored, brick colored ribbon, and I like to have a nice angled end. And I made what I would call like a ribbon loop here. And all I'm gonna do is tape it. If you want it to be an angle, or it can be, you know, straight up and down, however you want to do it. I'm gonna grab my tape and I'm just gonna tape this right there. Then I have this guy, so I'm gonna turn him over and add a few halves. I cut them in half with my foam adhesive circles, and then I'll remove the backing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And add this. Oh, that's so sweet. I love it. Okay, everything's ready. All that's left to do is just attach. So here's my secret. It's amazing. Close the strip, and it's going to be placed right here. Now have your adhesive ready. We're going to flip this top to bottom like that and line it up. And I want you to see where the edge of this blue or teal paper is, and I'm going to add adhesive and not going past that line. Then flip it back over, bottom to top, center it within the square. Perfect. Then we can lift this up, close the card, put it back down. We'll add adhesive so that it doesn't go past the halfway mark on this piece. And then close it. Now the card will lay perfectly flat and it will open perfectly flat and it will display like that. Cool, right? The other thing is this has been very strategic so that you'll end up with a perfectly sized card to fit in your envelope. Thinking, right? We are thinking around here at all times. The last and final embellishment, I decided to add these cute little embroidered stars. They kind of just reminded me of the Wild West for some reason. And you can add one to the corner if you like. If you would prefer it in another place, it's your own card, and you know that. You know you can do anything you want. You can keep these as simple as you like, but I think this is pretty simple, and we've really got it mapped out for you beautifully. If you're doing this with, you know, substituting your own paper and making this, and you don't have that handy little guide for placement, just use a ruler and your envelope maybe as a guide to keep it level and placed in the center, and without going past the edge of the envelope. That was set A. I'll show you the others. Here again is one of the samples I made with the yellow card base. And then we have our I Heard There Was Cake, all the same basic assembly using the ribbon color of your choice. You have plenty of ribbon to use too. Okay, that was fun and easy. Now you can pause now and go back and make the rest of these right now while it's fresh in your mind, or let's move on to set B. We'll begin by taking everything out of the pocket as usual, pocket B. All right, that's a lot of fun things. Let's go ahead with our card bases now. Find the bump of each score line. I'm just going to flip everything over. And again, I like to just make sure that before I fold, that those ends are lined up neatly. I never trust a score line, you know, without just, you know, trust but verify. And then I'll get this guy, ivory. I love that ivory paper. We even sell it by the sheet in 8.5 by 11 sheets because it's so nice for card making. Or we sell it in 12 by 12s too. You want to just stock up on that beautiful ivory. And do you see how I batch burnished? I just stacked them all and did all 4 at once. Let's distribute these. So we're going to do 2 vertical cards. One will be that teal, the other will be ivory, and then 2 horizontal cards, one green and one rust. Then I get this big old pile of stuff here. I didn't really sort it. I got a lot of little bitty pieces too, and strips, and oh my goodness, I got a handful. Or as my dad would have said, a mittful. Okay, so we get a nice printed panel on each of these. Then you have a series of brown panels. You should have 4. And they're not quite to scale. So think in terms of upper center, margin, all 3 sides, and then lower or left edge and center top to bottom on these 2. Of course, you know, they're not going to stay in that position, but just to give you an idea of how that ends up. Then you should have some slightly smaller, actually 2 sets of colored panels. So let's just get organized here. Okay. You see the size difference? So I'm having you look for the large one. Let's put a green on this, and you can see that the reveal is about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to have the teal, have the brick, and the ivory. Then going smaller now, we have the brick, the green, ivory, and the teal. Now we have some sentiments, the smaller ones. So happy trails and happy trails, mountains of luck, and mountains of thanks. Now in your goodie pile, you have some craft tags. Let's add a craft tag to each one of these cards. And then the tiny little explore. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's add our inner sentiments. So we have, do not pet the fluffy cows on those top 2. And then wishing you the best in your next adventure, and your kindness brighten my day, left and right respectively. Now we have 2 other smaller sentiments. Seek adventure was used on the inside of card 1, and go play outside was used on the inside of card 3. And now we have these little rectangles. We're gonna put the ivory one here, the brick here, the turquoise teal here, and the green on this one. Now we have these longer strips. We'll match the same color as the little square. So ivory, rust, teal, and green. Now would be a good time to grab those medium-sized envelopes. And I fully understand that these pieces are huge and they will be trimmed down, of course, eventually, but I will load my envelope with the contents of these 3 piles, and let's make that first one together. And I've got a couple of nice tips. Again, the advantage of watching the video and not just trying to read the instructions, but you know, get the tips, come for the tips. And if you don't need to know how to trim the papers, just fast forward. I have all those titles, all those chapters marked. So if you need help with card set B, you can go directly to B without passing go, without collecting $200. Okay, so here I have a little plan. And I'm going to start with this tag because, and I'm pulling in one of the scraps, one of the strips from, you know, earlier when we trimmed the brown, there we had all these leftover pieces. And I'm just going to take this and glue it. Now there are 2 ways you can deal with this. I'm going to cut it out, or you can craft knife it out. Maybe I'll show you the craft knife technique. And this is just handy for when you are doing a small reveal. Like I just want a little tiny reveal. So half of a cube is kind of what I'm going for on this. And I'd cover what I want to keep with the ruler, and then I remove what's outside of that. See, just a nice little rectangle there. Now I can add this to my craft tag, and I'll probably use the bookbinding glue again just because it's a small thing. And add this with the hole on the left. Now it just so happened that I had this little square in the kit, and do you see how the width of it is just kind of perfect? So now I'm going to add the tag right to this rectangle so that it aligns left, right, and bottom. Then I'll cover what I want to keep. It's getting a little thicker here. You could use scissors as well. And I'm just going to get rid of that. So it just is a nice frame. Could you add the Explore directly to the tag and skip all of the matting? 100% yes. Absolutely, go for it. I'm just showing you an upgrade. At least I think it's an upgrade. Doesn't have to be done. And because I added this layer, I need to come in with the punch. I'm using an 1/8 inch punch. This is a crocodile, to add a hole again to the whole mix here. Okay, so I can set all of this aside and we can move on with our assembly. Now I don't want to add this to the card because I have some ribbon I need to deal with. So all that I have to do now is just layer, layer, layer. Okay, so if you want to make all 4 cards at once and do all this layering at once, that can be a time saver. Just turn everything over and add your adhesive and stack away. Just remember, we have ribbon ends or fiber ends to deal with before we add all of these nested pieces to the card. Now this reveal is going to be 1/4 inch, so 2 cubes on the ruler makes this centered. And now I'm going to lay this onto the brown, and that's going to be a 1 cube. And you don't usually need to use a ruler to keep it level, but you know, why not? Now I'm going to add this, and I'm looking for, I think it's 3 cubes. I notice I'm 3 cubes from this, this, and this. Okay, so I'm centered, and I have an equal margin left, right, and top. I'm going to have this little piece kind of overlap into that green area. Looks really cute. I'm going to prepare to attach it with foam adhesive circles that I cut in half. But I'm not going to attach it yet. I'm just going to add my circles. I'll add 1 on each end and then 1 kind of in the middle. Enter the 2 yards of jute that you have with your kit. That's kind of handy. And I'm just going to cut a length, I don't know, 8 inches is plenty. And fold that jute in half so you have a loop. And I'm going to thread from back to front and then bring the ends through the loop. Okay. Now I will remove the backing from my tag and center this with that rust mat is the same width. Okay, then just split these little ends apart and have them going around to the back. You could tie a bow as well if you wanted the ribbon to be a little bit more, you know, visible, but you know, it's really sweet. Just like so, just like that. Okay, now because our ribbon is taped here, we can add our panel to the card. And it looks like it's going to be 2 cubes or 1/4 of an inch. So I'm not really paying attention to the measurements I'm getting. When I add this, I pay attention to the cubes. There we go. That looks really nice. Now for the inside, we have this strip. And it's too long, but I didn't really have you cut it because we're just going to be adding a little V. Cut a little V into the bottom. Kind of gives us this bookmark sort of a feel. So that can go here. And you have your sentiment. Do not pet the fluffy cows. And I added the Seek Adventure. I added that to the inner lower left corner. Just kind of balances it out nicely. And there you have your set B vertical card. So the other one, of course, goes together the same exact way. Again, I did all the little nesting, totally optional. And then you have your horizontal cards as well. Mountains of Luck. I added the Go Play Outside. Notice I matted that with a little bit of the brown. I had so much of that brown. So it just is a nice matting color. And then here, just the strip. Very, very simple. Very easy to put together. I hope you like this simple set. And now let's move on to card set C. I'll take everything out of that pocket. And there is a lot in that pocket. And again, it's always wise to just make sense of it a little bit. I kind of failed with that last card and just went for it. But gosh, it's so much easier if you kind of have your pieces organized by size. They've got a bunch of like large, medium, small, and then strips. Then we have printed strips. We have lots of brown squares and lots of printed squares. We'll get those kind of piled up here. Okay, the squares, this stuff, yeah, lots of these printed squares. And then the ivory pieces that are not square are the innies, the inside card decor. So set that aside, get these out of the way, and guess what our first step is going to be? Find the bump of the score line and bury it. Check your edges, your corners to make sure everything's level, especially on a fold this long. I mean, it's an 8.5 inch score line, so you want to make sure everything's lined up nicely. All right. Then I'm going to do the batch burnish. So stack them neatly. Flip. Nice. Okay, let's get these foundations laid out here. We have 2 horizontal, so I'll go with ivory and brick. And then we got our teal and green. Now we get to distribute all of these wonderful nesting panels. So going with the largest colors first, we've got brick, then green, ivory, and a teal. The next largest panel will be distributing all those colors, right? Green, teal, brick, ivory. The next largest now, teal, ivory, green, brick. Next, come in with your printed strip. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the brown squares. Each card will get 3 brown squares. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then we have our sentiments. Thinking of you. There's 2 thinking of yous. You mean so much to me. That's the lower on the right. Happy trails, lower left, and thinking of you. Now all the rest of these is just 2 different styles of art. We have this landscape and we have this beautiful National Park aerial view. So aerial view, landscape view. And these happen to be miniatures of the prints that are included in the page kit, which is kind of cool. We also will have some innie things going on here. So I've added the rust strip here, the green, the ivory, and the teal. The two horizontal cards both get I was just counting my blessings and thought you should know you were one of them. And here we have the congratulations on your retirement and thanks for being an amazing friend. I added this guy to the brick card. I nested it with some of the brown scrap that was left over. So had plenty to go around. And now I'm going to grab those last 4 envelopes and just dump everything in here so that we can keep track of all those parts and pieces. And you're gonna love how simply these come together. Very, very easy. I did that kind of intentionally as October starts to get really busy with preparing for the holidays. You're probably gonna be wanting making your Christmas cards as well. So I didn't want to do all kinds of complicated mechanics. Oh, as I was talking, I'm gonna put this one together with you. Now we don't have to worry so much about ribbon. I didn't add a bunch in this case. So I'm gonna take my brick colored panel here and add it to my ivory card, and that's going to be just an 1/8 of an inch reveal. So I will eyeball. I'm going to use my larger ruler for this one and go 1 cube this time from the previous panel. And this next one isn't going to be the same on the sides as it is from the ends. This time I am going to center up my ruler. I got my 0 here and a 4 and 4 on this green panel. It's centered. It'll be 2 cubes from the bottom and 3 cubes from the left and right edges. So you'll notice just a little bit wider margin here on the side, but the ruler helps us make sure that it's nice and level and centered. Next, I'm gonna add my squares, okay? And they have a texture, so I'm gonna make sure I put the adhesive on the smooth side. Then after I add the squares, I'll add the print. I wanted as little of that print covered as possible. Now, you can go 1/8 of an inch here on this edge, top, bottom, left. 1/8 of an inch from the other end, top, bottom, and left again. And this just centers up on there perfectly, so you can even use that ruler to help you with placement there. Beautiful. Next, I'll add my print. It's going to be 1 1/8 inch from the bottom of the card. So that's it's 9 cubes if you're counting. And I'm going to center this. The edge is with the green panel. All right, so now everything's really laying out nice. Make sure I have my card oriented so that the opening is at the right spot. And I'll add adhesive to my little printed Cutaparts here. And then I can center this over the brown square, even though that print is sandwiched in between it. I have a little embellishment, but I'm going to wait to the end to add that. I'll open the card and add adhesive to my anchoring strip. So this could have been a scrap, but I just decided to save it. And I'm going to attach it 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge here. And by using that ruler again, I just stay nice and level. Now I did a little something with this strip here. After this is attached, I can go ahead and use this aqua strip as another little addition of colors. So I'm running the tip of my glue bottle along the edge of this brick colored strip, and then I'll lay this, just falls right in, just drops in. And notice it's too long. No problem. Just take my favorite scissors, rest it against the edge of the card and clip it off. It's easier than, trimming it with your paper trimmer. I was just counting my blessings. I'll add that. Adding this last cute little piece here. So nice. Okay, the Longhorn charm then, I took some of this jute ribbon and just threaded it through and tied a knot. Now, if you're not a fan of making bows, you can just leave it at that, just trim the ends, but you can make a little bow by making it big first So it's pretty big. Then if I just pull the ends and tighten, no matter how big and unruly your hands are, you can still make a nice little bow. Trim the tails, and he's gonna go right here. To attach all of my charms, all my metal pieces are attached with our bookbinding glue. It does an amazing job. And that's usually why I do this last, so I can set aside, you know, walk away, let it sit for a few hours or overnight. And that, oh, so cool. I love that. It's nice and flat. The other one, rust, exactly the same. I matted this using that craft knife method I showed you with the craft knife and ruler. Then the other two are vertical. Congratulations on your retirement. So nice. Oh, and here I used the strip of the print. That adds a lot. And here I used the strip on the outside. So, you know, follow your muse. It's your own card, right? That's all I got. There's no set D. It's just ABC, 4 of each, 12 cards, lickety split. And I really hope you love this Yellowstone collection as much as I do. It's so beautiful. And if you're into making pages or books or other projects, be sure you pick up the Yellowstone page kit. It's a stunner. It's absolutely stunning. So grab that. And while you're at it, if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe, hit share, hit like, leave me a comment if you learned something new today or if you just enjoyed the class. I always love to hear from you. And meanwhile, if you're not already a member of Club Scrap, I want to invite you to join me. Anyone can always shop and pick up a kit, but members always save. I look forward to seeing you again soon in another Club Scrap workshop. Thank you so much for joining me.